The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicole Hennessy. I'm Vice President of the Music Business Association. I'm here today. Beside me is Henrik Bick, our Communications and Media Assistant. We're going to be working alongside Ilana and Adam today during the presentation to kind of field and moderate some of your questions. But before we get into, introducing today's presentation and talking a little bit more about Adam and Ilana, let me just give you some housekeeping items on the music biz side. As I said, welcome to the Common Ground webinar series. It's a series that we do webinars at least 2 or 3 times a month. So following this particular webinar, we have Pandora coming on February 28th with a presentation called Grow Through the Power of Pandora. In that webinar, we'll explore the data available to artists, managers, and labels via Pandora's tools, including Next Big Sound and AMP. So take a look on the Music Biz website for registration for that webinar on February 28th. We also, this leadership webinar series that you're going to hear the first presentation of today is actually a 4-part series. We have another presentation on March 7th, one in April, and then one in May in conjunction with Music Biz 2019. So not only will that May event be a webinar, but it'll be also face-to-face for anyone who is in Nashville with us for Music Biz 2019. You'll be able to, sit in face-to-face in a room with Adam and Ilana and hear the presentation live and ask questions, of the 2 presenters face-to-face. So, definitely check out the website as well for the 3 events that are a part of this, 4-part leadership series. And I mentioned Music Biz 2019. That's, our flagship annual event will be in Nashville for the 5th straight year from May 5th through the 8th. We announced the preliminary schedule just a few short weeks ago. Check out musicbiz2019.com. You can link to the schedule. There are, over 100 breakout sessions. And definitely some conferences within a conference, including our Metadata Summit, our Financial Literacy Summit, our Brand Summit. So, be sure to check out that schedule online. We've made some really great announcements so far for the convention. We have a feature presentation from Apple Music's Zane Lowe, as well as Def Jam CEO Paul Rosenberg. We'll present our Music Biz Awards, the Breakthrough Artist Awards, to BB Rexa and Kane Brown. We will honor Sony Nashville's president, Randy Goodman, with our Presidential Award. We will also present our Independent Spirit Award to Record Archive. So a number of great awards for artists as well as executives will be presented during our awards dinner. So check all of that out. Again, it's musicbiz2019.com, or if you just go to musicbiz.org and drop down the tab, you'll see Music Biz 2019 listed there. So for today's presentation, as I said, we have with us Adam Mirabella, who's president of Mirabella Leadership Advisors, and we also have Ilana Zivkovich. She's founder and CEO of Work. They're both certified executive coaches. When Adam and Ilana brought this idea to myself and Jim Donio months ago, we talked about how the association Music Biz is here to, help businesses grow. And I think one of the things that we also, want to do and need to do is help executives themselves grow, offer career development presentation. We do that at our annual event, but have not done that on this level on the webinar series. So we're glad to have this 3-part series as part of the webinars. And you're going to get those tools and insights to become a better leader, achieve better results, and to motivate your team. So this is definitely a career building series. We're very excited. I'm excited to put myself on mute here in a few seconds and listen to what Adam and Ilana have to say. But before I do that, just know that there is a questions box on your screen. And that is your chance to interact with Adam and Ilana, and myself and Henrik will be fielding those questions throughout the presentation and, kind of interrupting and and reading those questions off to our presenters. So feel free if you have questions as they're going through to put them in that questions box, and we'll answer them as they come in. So without further ado, Adam and Ilana, thank you so much for being here today. We're muting ourselves and turning the microphone over to you.
Great. And if for some reason people hear an echo, I have my headphone on, just send a note to Nicole and we can adjust that. So, well, thank you, Nicole, for that intro. And my name is Adam Mirabella, and this is the first in a 4-part series about leadership. And we want to thank the Music Business Association for sponsoring this program and putting this together with us. So I'm Adam Mirabella. I am a certified executive coach, but I've also been in the music business for over 15 years, working for Warner and Sony, heading up their digital departments. And my career has taken me to other places where I've gotten a view into the leadership roles and approaches of the film industry, the publishing industry, as well as the television industry. So I've got this sort of panoramic view of leadership inside of entertainment, and you know, hoping today to bring some and shed some light on a great path forward for people inside the music business. And my partner in co-creating this and co-presenting this is Ilana, and I'd love for her to just introduce herself.
Yeah, thanks so much, Adam. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ilana. I am the founder and CEO of Work Leadership Services. We are a leadership advisory firm, and unlike Adam, we actually work across industries. We don't have a specific vertical. So part of what we're able to bring to the table is best practice knowledge from industries ranging from private equity to real estate to CPG to retail to high tech to higher education. Each industry can at times get into their own reps, and I'm very excited to be able to share some best practice knowledge that's been synthesized from across different areas of practice. So thanks so much for having us today.
Great. So I want to talk a little bit about why this program was put together. As I was working towards my certification as an executive coach, I was thinking about my time inside the music business. And, you know, over 15 years, there haven't been a ton of opportunities for me to advance myself as an executive, as a manager, as a leader. And you know, my career started outside the music business with a company called Coca-Cola. And at Coca-Cola, there were always opportunities for a person to advance themselves in terms of their skill set as a leader, as a manager, as an executive. And so as I was going through, you know, my program as an executive coach, I thought, man, it would be really interesting if there were something for the music business to help music business executives really get their hands around leadership and how best to engage their teams and move their teams forward with an understanding of things beyond just, you know, what we do in music. So when you look at the business and the way things have changed in the last 5 to 7 years, it has just been absolutely massive change. But we all know this is not going to stop, right? The things that are coming down the pike here, you know, I'm a digital guy, the Internet of Things and voice assistants and what's happening in technology and auto, you know, these things are going to keep moving and disrupting the music business on a regular basis. And what I firmly believe is, you know, to succeed in this business, you absolutely need, you know, a passion and a love for music, right? That's why we're all in it, for sure. You need to be a functional expert. So if you're in PR or if you're in, you know, sales or if you're in A&R, it doesn't matter. You need to be really good at whatever you deliver for your company. But I believe that the people that are going to have longevity in this career, in this industry, are the people that have those things, but then also understand how to influence and motivate and inspire the people around them as a leader. And you notice I didn't just say the people that work for you, because when you're a leader, you know, you can lead and inspire people that are above you, that are your counterparts, and of course, people that work for you. And so that's what this program is about. It's to give the tools, the ideas, and to start people in the industry really thinking about how they can take their leadership experience to another level. So we've got today's part one of a 4-part series, but we've got foundations, which we'll go over today. We have a piece on personal branding. We've got a module on how to mobilize and engage your team. And then lastly, we've got something that'll be presented on May 6th at the Music Business Association conference on emotional intelligence. And I think that one is really interesting because everybody now, in the Me Too era, everybody understands what the words emotional intelligence mean, but it's very hard to get your arms around how to incorporate that into leadership and your leadership style. So we'll tackle that on May 6th, okay? So let's talk about track one, which is foundations. And you can see in front of you the agenda, but basically what I want to do is just package all these pieces up and let you know that by the end of today, what you'll walk away with is a very clear view on how to take the first steps to really owning who you are as a leader, who you are as a manager. And that's what today is all about. And I think it's super important because when you look at the other modules I just outlined, those other modules are super interesting and important, but they'll be much more beneficial if you have your head around the beginning parts and the foundations. So I want to start by, just posing a question, and it's rhetorical because I'll answer it, but what do people really want from their leaders? And, you can think about in your situation, the different players that you've worked for in your career. And I firmly believe that people want two things from their leaders. They want vision and clarity. So vision is the first piece is, what mountain are we going to conquer? When you think about a leader, it's, the person that's saying, this is where we're going, this is where we're heading. And I use this, image right now of a mountain because there's a lot of places where you can go when you're leading a team, and the people on the team want to know where are we going, which mountain are we going to conquer today? So that's the first piece that they want. The second piece that people want is clarity, because I'm using the metaphor of a mountain, but as you're going to conquer that mountain or that initiative or that opportunity, things get murky sometimes. And in business, that means they could get political. It means that your funding might change. It might mean that your company gets put into a situation where you're merging or being bought by somebody. So things get kind of murky. And when things are murky, the people on the team are looking for and expecting the leader to offer clarity during that uncertainty. Another look at this is when you say, hey, we're going to climb that mountain over there. There are often many roads that you can take and many different approaches that you can take in order to climb that mountain or to conquer that goal. And so people are looking for a leader to look at the choices in front and be clear about the road that they're going to take forward.
Excellent. Thanks, Adam. And so here's what we're really going to be running you all through today. We have here this leadership pyramid, and Adam, there are some click-throughs on this. We're going to be working you through from the top to the bottom, starting off with vision, which is the big picture why that you as a leader on a team or even you within your own career, if you're just applying this to your own personal leadership development, can really serve yourself well to answer the big question of why. Then we're going to head into mission, which is what? What are we actually doing? We do nothing else when we wake up. What are we actually doing to accomplish that why? That is supported, of course, by our values, which interestingly, some of you may think of that as a what, but as we'll get into later, values are really the how. Values are what guide our behavior, the things that we hold near and dear across different life roles and across different circumstances. Next, we get into goals and initiatives, which we'll spend a bit of time today, which is what are we doing and how are we doing it? And finally, at the very bottom, the people, processes, and resources necessary to accomplish it, which is a little bit more the how along with the who. Oftentimes as evolving leaders, we think, okay, I really need to get the right initiatives in place. I need to be tactical and make sure that my team is executing on the right things. But I'll tell you, if you don't have clarity, as Adam mentioned, around your vision, your mission, and the values that are going to guide all of that, then those goals and initiatives and certainly any processes you put in place may not end up being the right ones, may end up even further confusing things, creating more work rather than creating more value. So this is essentially what we're going to be working you all through today in this webinar.
Awesome. So, that's a bit of, the thinking around it. So let's dive into some of the experiences and some of the, the more connective tissue that'll help you guys get your arms around this. So when you look at vision, it's about where do we aim to be, and in particular, where and what do we want to be in the future? This is what a leader has to really help define. And if you're the leader of a department, right, in a label, well, then you need to define that, for your department. And of course, it needs to connect to the bigger goals. But what you need to do is when you're creating your vision, you need to think of something that's vivid, aspirational, something that's memorable that people can kind of really take with them. And then, as I said, you need to be aligned to your bigger organization. So if you're running a department, then you want that lined up to, let's say, if you're at a label, you want that lined up to the label group. If you're working for Apple and you're running something with, a team at Apple, you want that lined up to the greater Apple Entertainment group, which then lines up to Apple's vision, right? And I wanted to give an example of one outside the music business, and I really love this one. The Toronto Zoo will be a dynamic and exciting action center that inspires people to love, respect, and protect wildlife and wild spaces. When you look at this vision, what's amazing about this is it really doesn't matter if you are the person that cleans the cages, if you are the person that's serving soft drinks, if you're the person that's giving tours, or if you're the person that's, creating the habitats for the animals in the zoo. You're connected to something bigger and something that is really aspirational. And so if you're the person pouring drinks, you realize that your part of the puzzle is something that leads to people being inspired to love, respect, and protect wildlife and wild spaces, right? So this is something that makes people excited to come every day to do the work that they're going to do. Nobody just wants to have a job. People want to have something that moves them personally. And I think this is a really interesting example outside the music biz. When you look at inside the music business, I tried to do this for my teams at Warner and Sony when I was running digital. And so we had a little joke inside of our team where, the beginning days of digital, we were doing things with Apple and with Verizon and T-Mo and, AT&T and whoever. And we used to kind of take shots and jab each other a little bit, kid around and say, we used to say, you're making this stuff up, right? And so if somebody was doing something, let's say with AT&T Mobile, we'd be like, you know what, that doesn't even exist. You're making this thing up. And so it was kind of a source of, kind of fun, and we'd kid each other about it. But at the same time, I thought, well, this is the opportunity for me to stick a pin on this and really to develop my vision. And so the vision that I had, that my team embraced as well, is to be the most innovative digital team in entertainment, creating the future of the fan experience. And so if you break this down, we didn't just want to be the most innovative digital team in music. We wanted to be the most innovative digital team in entertainment. So a bit audacious, right? Putting ourselves out there. But what this did for myself and the team is that it really set the bar at a high level and said to us that we are going to, spar with and be kind of in the throes with companies like HBO and Cartoon Network and Sports Illustrated. And in fact, when we were creating opportunities, we would either, look to outdo some of those players in entertainment, or to literally to be blazing the path and do some of the things that those other players hadn't done before. And this vision really inspired us and moved us, to that challenge. And it's something that, that made a difference for us. And then the part about the fan experience is, there are a lot of different fans. Some people are fans of, now Netflix, right? And binge watching. Well, some of the things that we did kicking off on these teams are some of the things that led to what we do now with, with you see now in Netflix, or you might see in other places. So we really were trying to, to beat a new path down to the experience. And Ilana, I'm going to have you talk about the C.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Adam. So vision is one of these things that sometimes we might glance over or think, do we really need to put the time into developing this? But I'll tell you what, as Adam mentioned, vision statements are intended to be aspirational, and they are intended to be a glue that can unify not only the members of our team and the people that we're, contributing to work product with, but those that are evaluating our services, our potential customers, our brand evaluators. So this quote is my single favorite when it comes to establishing a vision, and I'll read it to you here. It says, If you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men and women to gather the wood, divide the work, and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. So what's the message here, and why do we choose to show you this quote? Well, this is what a good vision statement does. A good vision statement teaches those around you to yearn for the sea, S-E-A, that you see, S-E-E. And when someone can really yearn for that, they are going to take it on themselves to work as hard as they can to give you their very best to achieve that, because they too are yearning for it. It actually allows you, in my experience, take this for better or for worse, to be a much more lazy leader. I'm a big fan of working smart and not hard. If I can figure out how to get everyone around me passionate and motivated to achieve the same end result that I'm looking for, then wow, magical things start to happen. So moving on to the next one, you may be asking yourself here, well, how do I develop my vision or a vision for my team or my organization? Here's some key questions you can ask yourself. Number one, what is my or our BHAG? That stands for big, hairy, audacious goal. You'll hear that term in business quite a bit in certain industries, but what is our BHAG? If we do everything perfectly, and again, this is not meant to be sort of your run-of-the-mill, oh, my BHAG is, I'll continue to get 5-star reviews by my manager. No, my BHAG is I'll be the CEO of the preeminent company in the music industry in 2030. It's something really, really big. It should be aspirational in nature. Number two, another question you can ask yourself, what impact do I or we most want to leave on the world? So vision statements, again, are meant to be big. They're meant to be grand. So at the end of the day, what do you really want the impact to be that you leave on the world? Another key question, number three, where am I, or if you're doing this with a team or a company, where are we brilliant? And best case scenario, what can that brilliance look like magnified over the long haul? So I'm a firm believer we all have sort of our superpowers and our kryptonite. We all have ways in which we're brilliant. And every company that's worth its stuff and that's keeping its doors open, there's some things that that company or that team, for that matter, are doing really, really well. So when we think about vision and what we can do the best over the long haul, starting off with just a very positive, strength-based assessment of what we're doing well right now can be very helpful. So moving on here, how can I best inspire people to yearn for the sea that I see? And as Adam mentioned at the beginning, we are going to do an entire module on how to engage and motivate those around you. This would be both for folks that are reporting up to you in a managerial capacity, but also for peers, fellow contributors, and even how to motivate your managers if that's the position you find yourself in. So really figuring out how to motivate them to yearn for that sea that you see is a big key question. So just a couple quick tools here. Number one is a retirement party exercise. This is particularly effective if you're thinking of your personal vision within your career. Very simple exercise. Imagine that you are retiring at the end of your career and folks around you have chosen to throw you a retirement party. Number one, congratulations. The vast majority of people in this world don't get a retirement party when they retire. They get, thanks so much for your time and see you later at some, company event. But imagine that folks have chosen to throw you a retirement party. What do you want them to be saying about you, who you are, the impact you had, or the impact you led your team or organization to have? Another tool, another exercise you can try is the leadership dashboard. This is a powerful one-page exercise. Either Adam or I would be happy to share this with you after this webinar. And it's essentially running through, as a leader, both you as the individual and you within your role on your team or within your organization, helping you identify through a bunch of cues and key questions, vision, mission, values, what are the things that make you really special, et cetera, et cetera. Having the opportunity to lay that all out on paper with crystal clarity and be able to really look at it, resonate with it, maybe you tape it to your desk right next to you so that you remember to shoot for those aspirations, can be very powerful. And number three is a very simple SWOT analysis. So for those who haven't done this before, SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Doing a SWOT analysis is one of the ways that we start to get familiar with, gosh, what are we really special about? And when I think about the opportunities, particularly within that SWOT, what are the things that if we really do everything right, we could really leave this lasting impact on the world? So simply doing that analysis can help shape your vision.
Great. So that's a bit about vision and how to really understand, to create and drive your vision. And then we talk about clarity. Remember, there are two things that people want from their leaders. They want vision and they want clarity. But clarity comes in a lot of different parts. It's not just one piece the way vision is. So let's talk about that. You know, clarity really, you know, when you look at the vision, the mission, excuse me, it is really about what are we going to do today and what do we need to deliver today, so that we're going to, you know, make sure that our vision gets completed. So the mission, where the vision is like, hey, in the future, this is where we're going to be. That's what vision is. It's sort of showing people where they're going to be in the future. The mission is heads down. This is what we're doing today. Every day we got to deliver on this mission. That's what mission is. And you want to be able to do that and understand who you're doing it for, so for whom, and what's the payout on that. So let's look at some examples outside the music business first. But for instance, Google, you know, to organize the world's information and to make it universally accessible and useful. Well, the payout on that is that information will now be universally accessible and useful. And who for? Well, basically the world, right? Philips, I think this one's interesting because, you know, this is not one that's in the press all the time, the way Facebook and Google and everyone are. Improving people's lives through meaningful innovation. So if I'm in this company, I think this is super interesting because it's a tech company, right? And then when you're creating your innovation, your mission every day is to make sure that you're not just putting out products that are innovative, but that they're actually improving people's lives, because you can put out a lot of technology that doesn't necessarily improve people's lives. So that's kind of an important, you know, twist on their mission. And then lastly, when you look at Tesla, I think this is amazing. When you think about car companies, I don't know about you guys, I think about, you know, how many units they're trying to sell, market share, you know, these kinds of things is what I would imagine would be in a mission statement for a car company. But here, you know, with Tesla, to accelerate the advent of sustainable transport, to me, is such an important thing. They do go on to talk about, you know, bringing compelling mass market electric cars to market, you know, which speaks a little bit about sales and the volume they want to do and how they want to, you know, it's mass market, right? It's not niche. But it ties back to, you know, to accelerate the advent of sustainable transport. So this helps people every day to realize that, you know, they have something they need to really deliver in terms of the overall mission and vision. So that's a bit about mission for outsiders. For me, when I was at Warner and Sony, I took our vision and we created a mission from that. And the mission was every day, basically heads down, what are we doing? Well, we're creating unique digital experiences that enhance the artist-fan relationship and bring value to our partners. Well, this is kind of important because, you know, we were working with the likes of Verizon, as I said, and mobile was kind of new and up and coming, and sort of like, well, we might do something that's really cool and delivers value to, you know, to Verizon, let's say, or T-Mobile, but, you know, maybe it doesn't really enhance the artist-fan relationship. Well, then we might take a pass on that. Or we might do something that's really unique and, you know, unique in the digital space, but maybe it doesn't connect the artist with the fan or doesn't bring a lot of payout to our value, you know, to our partners. So we would have to take a real hard look at that. And so we held ourselves to this metric where the things that we were going to do and the things that we were going to put into the marketplace would be unique. They would build the connective tissue between artists and fans and also deliver value. So every day we were heads down in that mission.
Excellent, thanks. And I'll take all three here, Adam, at once. Again, key questions. How do you go about developing your leadership mission? Always toggling back and forth between you as the individual and you as the leader of a team or an organization. Number one, to ask yourself, what are my or our top talents? Other questions, what is the contribution I or we most want to make to the world? And number three, and I believe this one may be the most relevant when it comes to establishing a really good mission statement. If I or we do nothing else, what must we do to be successful? So while the vision statement is very aspirational in nature, it's big picture, it's emotional, it's motivational, the mission statement begins to toggle that in. It begins to really look at what do we actually need to do? What do we need to contribute? So in Adam's example, his vision statement was about innovation and his mission statement was about creating value, creating a unique digital experience that enhances value for their partners. So these questions can help you begin to identify that mission statement. And really, at the end of the day, it should be something of a rally cry, something that you, as well as your people, can measure your behavior against to say, okay, I have a tough decision in front of me today. What would be more in line with our mission? Great, I'll do that. So the mission should begin to direct behavior in terms of what you and the folks around you are actually doing.
Yep, that's exactly it. You want people to be able to point to that and go, this has got to guide my daily, my daily work and my daily output. So they ladder it back to that and they say, you know what, this is off mission. I should be adjusting this or working on something else. So that's exactly right. Just a reminder, if you had questions, that you can pass those along through the application, and Nicole will highlight those for us. So let's move on and talk about the next piece of clarity, which is values. And with values, this is really what I call the rules of the road. If you're the leader or department head, you're running an area of the business, it's important for you as a leader to let your people know, and by virtue of that, an extension is letting people outside of your department know, how will you guys work? What's the vibe of your department? What's the spirit of it? And so I'll share with you, there were three things when I thought about our department at Warner and Sony, the ones I was running. Anybody who was looking at our department, I wanted them to see three things. Number one is that we would, do our best every day. And, a lot of times, whether it's internal or dealing with external partnerships, people are asking things from you, analysis, input, creativity, whatever. And I always wanted to make sure that people felt like we were really giving the full benefit of our thinking, and not something that was half-baked. The next one is do the right thing. And this one sounds kind of like obvious, but it sort of isn't. Do the right thing is a really interesting one, because so many times in business, we're asked to do something and there's just in your stomach, it's just a gut check. Something just doesn't feel right. And so I said this to my team, do the right thing. And I basically gave them a license. Anybody from an intern who was working on our team all the way up to my most senior people, if they felt something was off, that they should kind of, raise their voice, raise their hand and say, wait a minute, let's talk about this. So for instance, if you go back to like doing deals in the digital space, maybe we might look at something and someone might say, you know what, this is a little one-sided. It feels like our partner's getting more out of this than we are. We should talk about this. Or this might be the right program for another artist, but for this artist right now, where they are in their career, this doesn't feel like the right program. It feels like we're forcing this, right? And I will tell you, what's so interesting about this value is that people really took it and ran with it, and people felt that it was really important for them to speak up if something didn't feel right. And so I saw this one being used quite a bit. And then the last one is to treat other people the way you want to be treated. This was the third thing. I wanted everybody who interacted with our department to feel like they were being treated the way they would want to be treated. And so I have an interesting story on this one. There was somebody who was coming to my department from the marketing department. We were digital sales and biz dev. And through the interview process, I highlighted our three values. And this person had said, you know what, I can get on with those things. It's, yeah, that makes sense. And during the interview process, it was clear that they had had some friction with their coworkers in the marketing department. And so it was just something that I had tucked away in my head. But this person was a great fit for our department. Everybody loved them, great skill set. So we hired this person from the marketing department. And shortly into, them starting with the digital sales department, there was a lot of conflict with the marketing department from this one person. And so I had to bring them into my office and remind them that we have values that we work by. And I pointed out the third value, to treat other people the way that you want to be treated. And initially, I will say there was a big kind of blowback. And this person said, well, we're being taken advantage of. They're not treating us that way. I feel like we're being kind of run over here. They're just kind of beating us up. And so I took all that in and I said, yeah, I understand that. But these are the values that our department stands for. So I need you to take the higher road, and I need you to treat those people the way you want to be treated, even if they're frustrating you. And to this person's credit, they said, you know what? I said on the interview process I was going to do it. I'll do it, Adam. Okay, I'm on board. So they started doing this, and what's so interesting is, the first 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, there was a softening in the conversation and maybe a little bit better back and forth in email, but nothing really changed in the first 4 weeks or 6 weeks. But then you move out 8 weeks, you move out 12 weeks, and the people in that marketing department started to see, oh, this is the way we're always going to be treated. This wasn't just because someone got kind of a talking to or dressing down or whatever. And all of a sudden, things opened up. And by 6 months plus, what was amazing is this person had an unbelievable rapport with the marketing department. And it was so important, not only for our overall business, but for that person as an individual to learn and grow in their own leadership. They took the higher road, they kept at it, and eventually the whole relationship turned around, and it delivered so much for this one individual on my team because they needed the marketing department to ideate, to create, and to deliver those concepts and those opportunities that I highlighted before in the mission. So all of a sudden, this person's results really started to take an amazing hockey stick upward because they really embrace the values. So it's not just these these were my values, but whenever you create the values for your team, it's not just idle talk. It's something you have to really drive as a leader.
Excellent. Thanks, Adam. And as Adam mentioned, values really need to be representative of how we will engage and how we expect others to engage. So little pop quiz here. You can go ahead and answer in the question section if you like, or simply take this as a rhetorical question. These were the official values of a company that was a household name: integrity, communication, trust, and excellence. Now, take a guess at who these values represented. I'm going to show you. Go ahead, Adam. These values were displayed all over the corporate office, all over the materials of Enron. And if anyone on this call is too young to recall what happened, you can look it up online, but a massive historic case of fraud. Many executives ended up actually behind bars and facing significant legal consequences, defrauded large swaths of the American public, and created a lot of instability in our national and international markets as a result. And these were their official values: integrity, trust, right? Excellence, communication. So this is an example of what values should not be. They should not simply be buzzwords that you and the team around you think will make you look good for some reason. As Adam's story very eloquently described, these should actually be the expectations that we have of ourselves and those around us in how we are going to show up. So some tools and some questions that you can apply when it comes to developing values. Number one, we've got a lot of values clarification exercises. Again, myself or Adam would be happy to share them with you. There's some worksheet forms, there's some facilitated forms, but getting clarity on what your values are. One small note here, folks will ask me, well, I have my, work values and then my home values. Which ones do you want me to talk about? And I say, nope, we don't get two separate sets of values. Values are those guideposts of what is most important to us about how we show up in this world. You do not have the luxury, nor do I, nor does anyone, of having one set of values in one life role and another set in another life role. In fact, if you find that the values that you hold near and dear are not represented in the professional setting that you're acting in, that's oftentimes where we start to see high levels of burnout. We start to see disengagement. We start to see people leaving their roles because that's not a functional situation to be in long term. So first of all, just getting real clarity on, through some exercises on your values. Then if those are your values, once you've selected them, how do we most need to behave and show up? And moving forward, what behaviors really represent us living these values, and what behaviors put us outside of our values? And last but not least here, if we act according to our values, how will it impact our ability to achieve our mission? And here's where you get to be a little bit strategic. For most of us, there are many values that we hold dear. When it comes to setting the values of an organization or a team, that's where we get to be strategic and say, okay, these are the values that are both most important to us, and if they are, utilized to direct behavior, will most impact our ability to achieve our mission, grow our business, serve our customers, etc. So these are some great questions to think about as you're developing your values.
Great. And then moving on with clarity, as we said, there's multiple parts to clarity, and initiatives is a super important one. And if you go back to that visual that I showed in the second slide, which was, kind of the top of the mountain and it's kind of hazy and you're not really sure what's going on, or that circuitous road to get to the top of the mountain, is that the path we're taking the other path, whatever. This is exactly where initiatives come in. And think about it really for a moment. Like if you were literally on a hiking expedition and there's somebody at the front and it was really hazy like that visual is, well, if you're on the back of that expedition, you would expect some communication back, down the line with, the multiple people who are in that, let's say in that hiking trip, about what's coming up, what do we see heading, what's coming up in front of us, and which path are we going to take and which direction are we going to go. So with strategic initiatives, it's super important that they are strategic, meaning that they are connected to your mission. So whatever your initiatives are, that they somehow connect to your mission, and that you are limiting as a leader. This is one of the biggest areas I think that most leaders have to work on. You have to limit the initiatives for your team, because if you think about any organization, right, you go from the board of directors down. There's just so many things that are thrown at you. If you're 5 levels, 6 levels below that board of directors, there's initiatives that are coming in from everywhere. And so it's the leader's job and responsibility to say, well, wait a minute, these are the things that we need to do today, tomorrow, the next, or whatever, that are going to drive our mission, which are going to ultimately get us to our vision. And so I have here 3, you see 1, 2, 3, I'm suggesting that you keep it really tight to 3. I could see maybe opening that up to 5, but if you're doing more than 5 initiatives that you expect your team to work on, you're doing a disjustice to your team, because you're not weighing out and prioritizing the initiatives in front of you, and therefore you're going to drive your team to just be worn out and be way too thin.
Excellent. Yeah. I will be honest with you guys. I could nerd out on this slide for the next 5 hours if you would all stick around with me and let me. I feel really passionate about this. This is a lot of the work that my firm does with other companies and organizations, is really getting clarity on both the initiatives, the strategy behind them, as well as the execution plans to achieve them. So here, real quick and dirty, if you're interested in developing a strategy, people, devastatingly overcomplicate strategy quite often. And an overcomplicated strategy typically ends up being a lack of a strategy because it's too complex for anyone to actually follow. So when we do this work with organizations and teams, first question when developing strategy, what is our goal? Set a timeline for that. For example, if you were doing a strategy session with me this month, we'd probably just be looking at a 2019 goal, maybe, 2020 max. Things change very quickly in business, so we don't want to look all that far out in most cases, but getting clarity around what is the goal. And then, as Adam mentioned a moment ago, getting very explicitly clear, what are the top 3, if possible, strategic priorities or quote initiatives right now. If you have 20 key strategic priorities, you actually have 0, because people cannot focus their primary energy on 20 things all at once. So what are those couple of top initiatives that are the most important right now? Then what people, processes, and resources, back to, near the beginning of our presentation, but what people, processes, and resources need to be aligned to make those happen. That's the how. That's the tactical design, the execution. Oftentimes we may set, okay, we've got these 3 lofty strategic priorities. They're big, they're somewhat amorphous. If we don't take the time to develop the how we're actually going to achieve them, then, it's really just lip service. And to be frank, it can be a waste of our time. So from there, what needs to go on my or our stop doing list? And as a leader, guys, this is, beyond important. Most industries at this point, most people report feeling like they're near their bandwidth. Not every organization, not every team, but in general, in the workforce today, folks are working really hard. And how often have you been in a situation perhaps where you feel like you're at your max and a boss or a leader comes to you and says, hey, great work, so glad, keep doing all that. And also here's 6 more things that we're going to need to see from you and your department within the next month, right? And that feeling can be so crushing, and just thinking, how am I going to get it done? And inevitably something ends up being done not as well or not on time. So when we start adding on initiatives, it's important to take the temperature and to level set and to make sure that if we have added things, that we've been very strategic and conscious about simultaneously removing those things that are less vital, less important, or less urgent. Next, how will we measure success? This is so important to actually achieving our goals, is to having some KPIs. That stands for key performance indicators. Ideally, these are very measurable metrics that we can check back in on periodically throughout an initiative's timeline. And they're intended to be those things that help us evaluate on a consistent and ongoing basis how we're doing towards achieving what it is that we said we would set out to achieve. And last but very much not least is how will we hold ourselves accountable? And this, again, is huge. Perhaps you've been to an offsite or a strategy meeting or even just a general meeting where a bunch of agreements are made, you decide you're going to take a certain course of action, you get some plan in place around how it's going to all take shape, and then a month later you check back in and no one's done anything. Well, that happens. People are busy. We've got a lot of competing priorities. So getting clarity on how we're going to hold ourselves accountable. What do the check-ins look like? Do we have accountability champions? Et cetera, et cetera. These steps can very much help you as an individual if you're doing this planning within your own career, or certainly as a leader of a team or an organization, get a lot of clarity and a lot of action towards your goals.
Great. So the last piece on clarity is developing others, and this one's super important because when you look at the team that you're leading, people are seeing you at a place in your career where you're obviously leading them and you're running a department, or now you're leading, let's say, multiple departments with dotted line interaction, etc. So they're looking at you and saying, well, you got to where you wanted to be. You were able to develop your career. They want to know, what's my path to growth? People on your team want to know, what is my path to growth? And I do want to say here in the music business, it's interesting to me, not all managers, but I've certainly seen it more in the music business than I did in film, than I did in television, than I did in, let's say, publishing. But for some reason in the music business, sometimes managers look at the people on their team as their property. So they look at it and they say, well, I'm not going to let them off my team because I need them for my success. And so sometimes people's growth can be stunted by that. And it's really important as a leader that you help the people on your team define their path for growth, because if you don't, I can promise you they will define it themselves. And it probably doesn't include being on your team or maybe even being at your company. So if they feel like they're being held back, people will maneuver and do what they need to do to drive their career. I have a very interesting story here coming from the music business. I was running a team of execs, digital execs, and I was at dinner with another manager, another leader of a different department. And he was outlining for me that this role that he had that was, really important to him. And I said, oh my God, I've got the perfect person. And I highlighted somebody on my team. And this other manager said, well, wait a minute. You clearly, you're just trying to offload somebody to me on my department, right? Because the person you're highlighting doesn't, must not be delivering for you. And I said, actually, that's 100% wrong. This person gets great bonuses, has delivered for me for the last 2 years. I love what they're doing. I'm happy to keep them on my team. But what you just highlighted and what you need in terms of skill set, experience, and where you're trying to take that role, this is a perfect match. And I said, just interview them. And if you don't like them, that's great. If you do, great. Well, lo and behold, he interviewed the person and he immediately came back. He wanted the person, right? So we figured out the transition. It worked out well. And then that person that I highlighted, that I platformed, that person actually went on to get promoted 2 or 3 times inside of that new area of the business that he moved to. So clearly it was a great fit. It was great for that person personally. It was great for the company, and it was great for that other manager, right? And at one point, the other manager came back and said to me, I don't understand why you would do that. It's amazing to me that you would give somebody up from your team. And I said, because you're looking at it all wrong. I didn't give anybody up. It's my job to help that person and everyone else on my team figure out where they're going next in their career. Here you have a perfect opportunity that's an amazing fit. If I hold that person back, right, I'm doing a disjustice to them, right, and also to the overall business. And, I think this other manager was taken aback because that wasn't the typical way that people look at things inside the music business. But as I said earlier, if you are not helping the people on your team define their path to growth, believe me when I say they will define it themselves, and it will not include you or your department or your company. So you got to get your arms around that as a leader, and you got to be damn good at it. All right, so Ilana and I have a couple other things we want to, one last slide we want to share with you, which is chart topping leaderships, but it's a number of different things. What I want to say before I highlight these is, these are some best ideals, best practices in how to drive your leadership forward. When you're looking at these, try to look at one or two of them, get your arms around them, see if you can really incorporate them into your style, and then try to grab another one or two. Don't try to grab all of them at once because it'll just be too much. So the first one is engender trust. And I will share with you that I believe that everybody looks at their manager and thinks three things of their manager. And they might do this consciously, but it also might be subconsciously, but trust me, they do it. The first thing is, number one, they think of their manager, can I trust you? Number two, do you care about me as a person, as a human being? And number three is, are you committed to excellence? Well, the first one I mentioned is, can I trust you? Everybody thinks that about their manager. So for you as a leader, you need to engender trust between you and your team, and also between teammates on your team. You need to be the facilitator, and you need to be someone who engenders trust. It is the difference between a team that delivers and a team that does not. Be as transparent as you can. Well, guess what, guys? Information is everywhere, and it's so accessible. And so many times as managers, we think that by hoarding information, that it empowers us and it puts us in a better place. It doesn't. Of course, there are things that are confidential. You need to be mindful of those, and anything that's, connected to Wall Street and things that you can't say at certain times, of course. But most of the information that passes by us as a leader are things that we could share with our department during department meetings, give them a heads up. And guess what? The people that you're leading, they'd love to see what you're struggling with. They might even have an idea about it. So try to be as transparent as you can, share information as much as you can. Communicate regularly, not just when you're doing your annual update and giving a bonus. I firmly believe if you do not have a one-on-one with every direct report of yours, you're not communicating regularly. And we all know email is not a substitute. Lay out realistic goals. Keyword here is realistic. We talked about initiatives earlier and limiting those. Yes, that's your responsibility as a leader. But guess what? It's also important to line out and lay out, realistic goals. Because if you're on the receiving end of goals that you can't achieve, and this happens on a regular basis, there is nothing more deflating and nothing more demotivating to the people on your team than consistently trying to strive for a goal that they can't hit. So make sure they're realistic. Be decisive. This goes back to the paths that you're going to choose as a leader. The people that are, working aside you and maybe working for you, they're counting on you to make decisions so that they can make decisions about the business they manage. So you need to be decisive and you need to move forward. Delegate. This is such an interesting skill set, and it's hard for people, particularly as new leaders, to really get comfortable with delegating because they've been successful up until this point always by doing. Well, if you're going to be a great leader, there's no way you can do it all, so you've got to delegate. But that also then means that you're going to have to empower people to do what they're going to, take a shot at delivering what they want to do once you delegate. And then once they take their shot, guess what? They're not going to always win. They're not going to always get it right. So you need to leave room for people to make mistakes. And these three go together: delegate, empower, and leave room for people to make mistakes. It's really tough. I will say this is probably one of the toughest things for leaders to do when you move from being an individual contributor to managing people. And so you got to work at this. It doesn't come easy, and you've got to check your intensity level and your reaction time. Sometimes you give people time to breathe. Last two are motivate, inspire, and then bring the passion as well as a leader. And I want to talk, these two I want to comment and just say, it doesn't matter if you're not that, big outgoing person. Within your own style, this is actually an area where executive coaching can be of help, but you can still motivate, inspire, even if you're an introverted person. You can still bring the passion if you're a quiet person. There are ways to do that within your own space, within your own truth, and you just have to figure out how to do that in a very organic, natural way, and that'll make a difference. People will feel it. So I think we are at the point where there's Q&A, but I wanted to also quickly ask Ilana, is there anything that you wanted to add before we move into Q&A?
No, I appreciate everyone's time, and we look forward to continuing this journey with you next month.
Okay.
It's been a pretty quiet group. There are not questions in the questions box. So folks, if you have questions, please do put them in the box and we will give them over to Adam and Ilana.
Okay, great. Well, as we're waiting to see if any questions come up, as you can tell, Ilana and I really enjoy this subject matter. We really believe that, helping companies to foster leadership will make a massive difference for those organizations in the future. And we're happy to bring some of this insight and these ideas, to the entertainment biz and the music biz specifically. You can see here both of our emails. So if you have any questions that you didn't want to highlight for the wider group, you can always email us here. And the other thing I would highlight at this point is just to know that most of the companies that are part of the Music Business Association are formidable companies with really pretty strong resources. And what a lot of people might not know that Ilana and I know, because we work as executive coaches, is that there are a lot of CEOs in this, in this world that have support. There are a lot of CFOs, there are a lot of VPs, there are a lot of, SVPs that have support for the roles that they're delivering for their companies. So just know that this is a conversation that if you like what we're talking about and you're interested in seeing how you can get more support around this, be open with your human resource department and ask them. And who knows, maybe they have an opportunity where they work with coaches like Ilana and myself, or maybe it's a leadership forum that they have for the company itself, or maybe there's outside conferences they'd be willing to, let you participate in. But do raise your voice and let people know in your HR department that you're interested in getting more support on being a leader. And I guarantee you'll see some payback from that.
It's a very good point, Adam, for sure. We do have some questions coming in. So this one's two-part. Let me read the first part here. How would you recommend creating KPIs for team members?
That's a good one. Ilana, you want to take that one?
I was hoping you'd let me. Thank you. That's a longer conversation, first of all, so I'm happy to follow up with whoever asked that. But in brief, KPIs need to measure up. They need to be directly related to the key things that you want yourself and your team to accomplish. So the first step in creating KPIs is to sort of reverse engineer it and ask yourself, what are the key things, if it's for a team member, what are the key things that I really need this person to accomplish, let's say this year, just to put a time frame on it. Once you know what you really need them to do, then you reverse engineer it again and develop the KPIs. I'm happy to share with you guys there's some great YouTube references even on how to create KPIs. If you just measure, Google in or YouTube in, how to create KPIs, there's some good resources there. I'm happy to have follow-up conversations as well. But the most effective KPIs are ones that are quantitative in measure. Some will be qualitative. Are they, are they showing up and being nice? That's really hard to measure. If you want someone to live by your values and that's important to you, are they being nice? It's hard to measure. Are they receiving scores of 90% and above in their customer service satisfaction surveys? That's easy to measure. So a good KPI has a good, solid measurement with it. You have a source where you can pull the data from. So in that example, there would be a customer satisfaction survey that hopefully was tracked in some sort of a database. You have a frequency that you're going to measure it. So maybe you're going to be measuring that person on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. And then you have your very specific target. So if you have a KPI that has to do, again, with customer service satisfaction reports, you want to know what your target is. You want them getting 80% marks, 90% marks, et cetera. But big picture wisdom, you start with what you need them to do, and then you develop the KPIs to measure up to that. Great question, too.
The second one is good, and I'm interested myself to hear your answer. Any recommendations for holding ourselves accountable?
I'm sorry, what was the last part of that?
Any recommendations for holding ourselves accountable as leaders?
Oh, yes. Adam,
sure.
Okay, go ahead.
yeah. Well, I'll share some ideas, and then I'd love to hear your ideas too, Ilana. Let's both throw some ideas this way. But yeah, first of all, I think what we just outlined for you on the foundations of leadership, if you want to hold yourself accountable, then really push yourself to deliver the vision, the mission, the vision and the clarity, right? But the clarity includes mission, strategic initiatives, the development plan for your people. I mean, this is what, when people are on a team and they're looking towards a leader, driving them to a place where they haven't been before, I would say that's one place you could really hold yourself accountable, is to actually go through and do the work now on some of the foundations. What would you add, Ilana?
Yeah, that's great. The tactics I would suggest for self-accountability, number one, get specific. What is it that you're wanting to hold yourself accountable to? Write it down physically, pen to paper, or, keyboard to computer screen, write it down. Step two, share it with someone you trust. And when I say trust, not just someone you trust to hold that information, but someone that you trust to help keep you accountable. So that could be a friend, that could be a peer, that could be your boss, that could be a coach. I personally have worked with a coach for the past 10 years, and I don't think I'll ever stop at this point, But having someone else's eyes on what it is that you're holding yourself accountable to. And then number three, scheduling some form of review. If you're just doing it by yourself, if you don't want to involve other people, put a note on your calendar. First Monday of every month, you're going to spend 30 minutes going over your goals or whatever it was you're targeting and evaluating yourself. Or if you've involved other people in the process, scheduling in time and saying, hey, let's circle back on this. Let's get together for coffee once a quarter, because I just really, would like to be held accountable for this. So be very intentional, be very strategic, and wherever possible, involve other people, because left to our own devices, oftentimes we take the easy way out. At least that's me.
Yeah.
And
you know what? I'll add something. I think those are great, Ilana. I'll add something too. I mentioned earlier about communication and regularly communicating. And one thing that I did to hold myself accountable on communicating is with anyone who's a direct report, I still do this today, I have a one-on-one meeting. And my commitment to them is even when I'm traveling, we'll have that one-on-one meeting if we have to have it via phone or whatever. But what I do is I put it on the calendar and I make sure it's already on there. Even if you look at your calendar and you say, oh man, I'm not going to be able to start this for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, just put it on the calendar 4 weeks from now and start it as a recurring, because it'll hold you accountable to having that meeting on a regular basis. And that one-on-one interaction, people, they just crave it. They want to have that one-on-one interaction with their manager. And if you get it on the calendar and then you see that you're traveling and maybe the flight is during that time, then just make it earlier before the flight or make it after when you're at the hotel or whatever. But it'll push you to really use your calendar as a tool to keep connected to people.
And we have one more question here. And I hope I'm getting
okay.
So it reads, I've heard a debate about management being good versus bad. Some say it's needed. Others say it bogs employees down with stress about their performance. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, my thoughts are just like, there are good, strong leaders, good leaders, communicative leaders, etc., right? And there are people that need to work on that stuff or maybe are challenged in those areas. To me, management, it's very simple. When you're starting out your career, you're a contributor, an individual contributor. Not everybody really wants to be or is really equipped to be a manager. When you move from being an individual contributor to managing people. It's a different skill set, and it's a different kind of, you get results in a different way than when you're an individual contributor. I think sometimes what happens in business is everybody feels like they have to move up to managing people so that they can get the money, the rewards, whatever they want. But the truth of the matter is not everybody really wants to manage people, and not everybody's really good at it or is interested in it. And I think that, what I would say is that if it's something you want to do, there are tools, there are things that can help you transition from being someone who delivers stuff as an individual contributor to then being someone who delivers results through other people, which is what managing is all about. So to me, I think there's always a path to improve, and to become a solid manager, but you gotta, use the tools and the opportunities around you to do that. So Ilana, what would you add?
Yeah, I think that's a great comment. And, to be honest with you, the question in of itself, I really get that. I've heard that debate too. And that debate for me makes me feel sad, because I have been privileged and blessed to have managers in my career who take the time to mentor and coach me, many of whom to this day are still some of my closest friends. I swear, don't become my boss if you don't want to be a lifelong friend of me. Like I hold on to my bosses, evidently. But I think that question in of itself to me is indicative of part of why we wanted to offer this series. Management, quote unquote, should really be about coalescing the right type of energy to empower our people to be the best versions of themselves that they can be, and so that we collectively as a team can do the best version of our work that we can be. And it's just unfortunate that that's so oftentimes not the case. So I appreciate the question, and that's where the work needs to happen. So thanks.
And we have a number of people here.
All right, Nicole.
Yeah, we have a number of people
Go ahead.
asking if we're going to be, sending out the recording of this webinar. So what we do here at Music Biz, for all those Music Biz members who have a website login, you'll be able to log into the website and go to the recorded webinar section, and you'll be able to hear this presentation again. For those of you that don't have a login, Adam and Ilana both have their emails here, on the page, and I'm sure if you contact them directly, they'll be able to get you what you may need. So on behalf of, I want to thank you, Adam and Ilana. Thank you so much for this, very valuable presentation. Thank you for jumping on today, and I hope that we'll see you back here on March 7th for the, the second part of this 4-part series.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.